Locust Agricultural Solutions.
There we go. Locust Agriculture Solutions. So I got to meet Brian probably a year ago.
Yeah, it's pretty
and started discussing what he does, and he knows it better than I do. So I'm going to let him introduce what they do.
Okay, so Locust Agricultural Solution, we're kind of twofold. One, we are a biological company, so we have microbes, we have other bio products. And then the other thing that we do as well as is help you get monetized for the carbon that you put into the soil. You've heard about carbon credits. It's nothing new. It's been around for the last 30, 40 years. Carbon. So most of you have probably been through or heard people that went through the old Chicago Carbon Exchange. Well, things have changed. We're working with a market called NORI, and everything's transparent. And so that's kind of where we started. Was introduced to Mr. Garrett here. And so we'll kind of just go through the process. So what we do in the NORI system is we are a data manager. So what we do is help you gather all your information and put it into what's called the NORI system. And it's quite a process. I know more about Kelly Garrett in about 2 months than I care to know ever again. And so, but it is very intense. It's very, because we're looking at over 30 years worth of experience of cropping information. 10 years of that is in the future. That's pretty simple. The 10 years in the middle is very important, has to be very accurate. And then 10 years previous to that, we have to get kind of close. And we have to have 30 years worth of data to make the system work, the process to go through it and calculations. And so to qualify, you had to start what they call a regenerative farming practice. Typically it's going from intensive till to no-till, using cover crops if you're already a no-tiller. But that practice could not start any earlier than 2010. So like myself, I live in Minneapolis, Kansas, just north of Salina, 20 miles. Been a farmer, a no-till farmer for over 30 years. I don't qualify. That practice does not get me in. Now, if I started using cover crops in say 2012, then I would be in. I could be able to get my credits and go through the system that way. So those are some of the caveats to it. And so they look at different practices, especially using reduction of nitrogen, use of compost and manure, use of cover crops, increasing your rotations. So, a corn, soybean rotation kind of limits on how much carbon you sequester, even though corn is a great sequester of carbon. As we heard earlier today, CO2, that's what we're talking about, taking CO2 out of the air, putting in the soil. Not only becomes a food source, but also it helps the environment. And so if we can make those more biodiversity, they call it, and that's where the cover crops come in, or you go corn, wheat, alfalfa, soybeans, or something to that effect. So that's what we're looking for. That's kind of the growers right now that can monetize. It doesn't have to be on every acre that you do. That's what we help growers do. Your turn.
Brian was introduced to us through Extreme Ag, and he was looking for a guinea pig, and I guess I drew the short straw. We currently have 3,200 acres entered into the program, and we needed our FSA records, our crop insurance records, and then, for us, it was our field view records going back 10 years. The way that we qualified, like he said, through the regenerative practices, my dad and I put trash wheels on our planter ahead of the 2012 crop year, because we wanted to no-till, not just going into our bean stubble. At that time, we had some corn on corn. We wanted to no-till it all. That qualified us as an enhancement, is the term I would use. And we started going through it all with Brian and sending him our maps. And Brian and I have spent a lot of time together, a lot of time on the phone. It's quite an extensive process. But through their validation process, we have on average sequestered 1.15 ton of carbon per year for the last 10 years. the years 15 through 19, we can sell on the NORI system. And a carbon credit is equal to a ton. And a credit right now in the United States is worth about $15 per credit. So we're going to sell $80 per ton times 3,200 acres. And it's a big deal.
Times 5.
Times 5 years. You know, well, it's $80 an acre total.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
it's
somewhere in
$80 an acre total. It's a lot of money. And to do that under Brian's program, then, you know, we need to work with them. We're going to buy some of their biological as part of the program. Their biological is called Rhizolizer, you know, which we were using Accomplish or Pivot Bio, things like that. We're going to start using Rhizolizer now. They've got other soils that they can show you, other farmers, where people were sequestering 1 ton per acre, and after using Rhizolizer, they go to 4. Well, that'll be a lot more credits that we can sell in the future. Plus, you know, it's oversimplifying the process, but you want to have plant available nutrition. The microbes need to take in the nutrition in the soil. Their secretions are what's plant available nutrition, so we want to increase the microbes. We want to increase microbes, we need to increase the carbon in the soil. And so the Rhizolizer, in my opinion, is worth it just for that. Just increase the carbon in the soil, let alone the ability to sell those credits on the NORI system. You know, as Steve said earlier, the margins in farming continue to get tighter all the time. And if we can sell, you know, like right now we're selling $15 per year, you know, a little bit more than that. We're up to $80 for the last 5 years. Going forward, if I can sequester 4 ton a year, that's $60 a year added income to your farm. And again, it's an extensive process to get started. I would encourage everybody to visit with Brian and to go through the system and check it out. It really has been worth our while.
So, so there's other things in there. You can always, in the NORI system, you can always, it's a 10-year contract. You'll verify every 3 years. And basically, what the verification is, it's a third party, once again, transparency, that makes sure that the first year is the most complex. It takes a little longer than we'd like. Thing that we entered into the system, and then they go back and they check his records.
That say, hey, did you do this on this year? Did you buy this type of fertilizer during this year? Did you use this type of manure or compost during these years on these fields? So they go back and go through that. And then once that's verified, then of course, then you'll be able to open the market. The verifier costs, the grower pays for it. Once again, they want to see transparency, not Locust Ag paying for something that, because we help negotiate that price with the verifier. That's it. That's your standalone cost plus the cost of the Rhizolizer. We ask you, when you're in your program, we ask for 10% for our time and effort, because I'm just one of a team of 6 that enter data, go through the system, work with other third-party verifiers, work with NORI themselves. So there's a lot of time and effort. Just the maps alone takes one person. And it'll take them about 1 to 2 hours to put the maps in correctly. We just can't download from field view into the system. The system is actually built by the USDA and Colorado State University. So once again, that's the system we're using. It's called Comet Farm. You can go online and look at it. It's comet-farm.com. And that's the model that all the information goes into and computes how much carbon you sequestered by your practices. So we ask for 10% of the credits that are when you are verified. And then we also are asked that you apply Rhizolizer on 75% of the acres that you have in the program at that time. The minimum is, right now we're looking for growers at 3,000 acres because of the time and effort it takes and the amount of people it takes to get the information into the system. But it's just a 1-year commitment. Hopefully we'll show that not only will we show a yield response, but also you'll see the advantages in different things. Rhizolizer itself is a trichoderma fungi and a bacillus amorphaceous bacteria. So if you ever look at microbial scientists, they always say you've got to have at least a 1-to-1 in your soils to get things to act right. Typically, most of our soils are dominant by bacteria because of number one killer of fungi is UAN fertilizer. But with this product, what we've seen is not only yield increases, but also we see these huge increases of the root zone. And that's where we increase the amount of carbon that's being sequestered. Last year, we did some tests, and like Kelly said, we saw up to 4 tons on average per acre on corn alone. We use it in trees. We use it with specialty crops. So we feel like we got a benefit. We're going through the process right now. So in 3 years from now, you'll be able to be paid on the use of rhizolizer. We're going through the process right now to get it verified with the USDA as a regenerative farming practice.
The grower pays for the verifier. What kind of fee is that?
That is the verifier cost. Now the first year is the most expensive, so it's between $3,000 to $5,000, depending on the complexity of what you do. It's up to us to help you make sure that we get everything down pat, because it's just like hiring a lawyer. Every time that you call them up or every time they call you, they're going to charge you an hourly fee. So we try to get everything done the first time and have very minimal communication going back and forth with the verifier. Now the second time is going to be a lot less. You're probably looking at probably $1,000, because as long as you continue to do those practices that you started with. So if Kelly will continue to accumulate credits over the next 10 years on every field that he has in the system. So it's just not a one-time deal. So in 3 years from now, he'll get re-verified. He'll get 1 ton per acre times 3 times the number of acres he's got out there, times whatever he sells, because it's an open market, what he sells those credits for. We don't get anything from that. We help you get through the first verification, and then you control everything from there. Same thing with your data. Once you're verified and you've been paid on that first set of carbon credits, Locus Ag backs away. We have no control of your data. We don't share it with anybody. It becomes yours again. Same thing with any data that you share with us, we give back.
One of the reasons that it piqued my interest, as Brian and I have talked about it, is drip irrigation could potentially qualify as an enhancement. Yep. And the fact that we could use less nitrogen per bushel. So all of those things eventually we could get reimbursed for by being more efficient.
Yeah. So, and that's where you become a verified practice, go through the steps, how to work through that. And that's once again dealing with the USDA. And so that's what they're trying to do is not only make you more, we're all trying to be more efficient. No matter what we try to do, we try to create more bushels for every pound of nutrient we put in the soil, and try to maximize the water usage that we can. And so those are all key, and they help. And if we keep a healthy plant out there, we could sequester more carbon. And so that's what they're looking for to do. The carbon credit market is just going to get bigger as time goes on. The airline industry globally has a mandate by 2027 that they have to be carbon neutral. It means every airline across the planet has to be carbon neutral. Well, they can either do it by buying carbon credits from you, or they go and buy a bunch of new planes and new motors that are more efficient. Well, it's a lot cheaper right now to go buy carbon credits from you guys than it is to go start buying a bunch of jets from Boeing. And so that's where it's coming into play. The other thing, the rest of the world has carbon markets. In the UK right now, they're trading at 35 pounds per ton, which equates to about $50 a ton. So the upside in the market is big. We just got to get started. And Nori's not the only one out there. We're not the only company that's doing this. You've probably all been approached by other companies that say they've got a carbon market. This is probably the most transparent one you'll have, and you'll have control of it. And that's the key to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Brian.
You bet.